And they collapsed over here.
Don't worry about me. Don't worry about
Echoes call from hollow halls, a voice that creeps and softly crawls. Time stands still, the air is.
On July 16, 2023, at Lakeside Veterans Memorial Park in Forest Lake, what began as a tense standoff between two groups of teenagers spiraled into chaos. Cameras captured shouts, weapons flashing, and a white Mazda weaving dangerously close to the crowd. Seconds later, it accelerated straight into 17-year-old Darisha Bailey. She was struck, run over twice, and left fighting for her life as her brother screamed for help. Paramedics rushed in, but it was too late. Darisha died at the scene, her dreams of graduation and becoming a veterinarian stolen in an instant. But that was only one case. From parks to schools, libraries to city streets, these haunting moments show how quickly ordinary nights turn into nightmares. And just when you think you've seen the worst, the final case will leave you shaken. Let's begin with number 1. On October 9, 2017, the FBI was pulled into one of the darkest days Texas Tech University had ever seen. A freshman student, just 19 years old, managed to smuggle a stolen firearm past multiple searches, sit uncuffed in a police briefing room, and fatally shoot Officer Floyd East Jr., a man who had simply been doing his job. What followed was a wave of disbelief, panic, and grief that rippled far beyond the campus, leaving federal investigators and local police to answer one haunting question: how did this happen? It began around 1 a.m. that morning, when Hollis Daniels III, a troubled student from Seguin, Texas, had been accused of stealing a friend's gun. Body camera footage shows his first brush with police that night. Officers stopped him and performed a quick pat-down. "Any weapons on you, man?" one asked. "No," Daniels replied.
You got any weapons like that on you, man?
No.
You care if I pat you down real quick?
Yeah.
The officers didn't find anything. They asked to search his car, but Daniels nervously refused. With no probable cause strong enough to get a warrant, they let him go. Later, Daniels admitted on the stand that the stolen gun was in his waistband the entire time. With every pat of the officer's hands, the weapon slipped lower down his pant leg, just far enough to avoid detection. By mid-morning, Daniels was back in his dorm at Talkington Hall. His roommates reported hearing a gunshot. When Texas Tech officers arrived for a welfare check, they found a bullet hole in the wall, drug paraphernalia, and pills scattered in the room. Daniels returned while officers were inside. He tried to pass himself off as a roommate named Andre, but the lie collapsed instantly. Officer Floyd East Jr. cuffed him, patted him down again, and escorted him to a patrol car. Dashcam footage captured the short ride to the police department. "I'll be transferring one male, trying to ditch anything or get rid of anything. I'm going to check back there before we take you," East radioed in. But again, the gun went unnoticed. A dull thump in the footage, which East assumed was just the handcuffs, was actually the pistol slipping further down Daniels' pants. At the Texas Tech Police Department, Daniels appeared cooperative. Standard procedure often allows officers to remove handcuffs in a secured room if a suspect isn't combative. Officer East placed him in a small briefing room, sat down beside him, and began the booking paperwork. The two were alone for nearly half an hour. Surveillance footage shows Daniels shifting in his chair, reaching again and again toward the cuff of his pant leg. At 7:40 p.m., the gun's grip came into view on the video. 4 minutes later, Daniels asked Officer East 3 simple questions. Family at home? Kids? How old? Moments later, he pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the station. East, just 48 years old, collapsed instantly. Daniels bolted from the room, gun in hand. The call that followed was chilling. "Officer down. He's been shot in our briefing room. We don't know where the suspect went." Texas Tech University went into immediate lockdown. Students barricaded themselves in classrooms. Parents frantically called their children. Sirens wailed across Lubbock as officers from local police, campus security, and federal agencies swarmed the area. For nearly 2 hours, the campus was paralyzed with fear. Finally, Daniels was located and taken into custody without further violence. The question that haunted everyone was how a student smuggled a gun through 2 pat-downs and into a police building. On the stand, Daniels explained it himself. His pants sagged each time officers checked. Their hands missed the weapon by inches. When he was cuffed in the patrol car, he managed to reposition the gun against his leg and hide it again. By the time he sat in the briefing room, it was within easy reach. The footage showed everything: the fidgeting, the concealed grip, the sudden flash of violence. For jurors, there was no doubt. Daniels was convicted of capital murder of a peace officer and sentenced to life in prison without parole. In her remarks, Officer East's widow, Carmen, described the hole left in her life and the lives of their 2 daughters. "He kissed me goodbye that morning," she said through tears. "I never thought it would be the last time." For Texas Tech, the shooting sparked immediate changes. Officers reviewed arrest procedures, updated training on handcuffing and searches, and tightened rules for suspects inside police facilities. For the FBI, the case became part of a broader study into officer safety, a grim reminder of how even minor lapses in search protocol can cost lives. The footage of Daniels sitting calmly beside Officer East for 28 minutes, all while secretly maneuvering the gun, is what disturbed federal investigators most. It wasn't a sudden ambush or a chaotic chase. It was a quiet betrayal of trust inside what should have been the safest room on campus. Even hardened agents described it as chilling. The idea that a teenager caught with drugs and lies could sit across from a seasoned officer and then calmly ask about his family before pulling the trigger. It was cruelty in its purest form. Today, the story of Officer Floyd East Jr. is told not just in courtrooms and news reports, but in police training programs nationwide. His name is etched on memorials, his badge number called at ceremonies, with the solemn words, "End of Watch, October 9th. For students at Texas Tech, his death is a reminder of sacrifice. For officers, it is a call to vigilance. And for the FBI, it is proof that even in the most routine settings, danger can hide in plain sight, waiting silent until it isn't. Before we go any further, I just want to ask you for a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Our 100K special surprise was revealed, and we had many positive responses from you. Our next goal is to hit 200K before the year ends. It feels impossible, but hey, it's free to dream, right? Also, there's a hidden word somewhere in this video for you. Let's see if you can find it. Now, back to the video. On August 28, 2017, the quiet town of Clovis, New Mexico was shaken by a tragedy that felt almost unimaginable. That afternoon, 16-year-old Nathaniel Jouet walked into the Clovis Carver Public Library with his father's guns and opened fire. Within minutes, 2 beloved librarians, Christina Carter and Wanda Walters, lay dead. 4 others were wounded, among them siblings Alexis and Noah Molina. The case horrified the community, baffled investigators, and left families searching for answers about how a teenager spiraled into such violence. Court documents and later testimony painted a disturbing portrait of Jouet's mental state in the months leading up to the shooting. According to police reports, he had spoken of suicide, violent urges, and even auditory hallucination. He admitted to officers that his original plan was to shoot up his high school and then kill himself. Instead, he chose the library, a place he had no personal connection to. In his own words, he was kind of mad and felt like everyone hates me. His attack was not random rage, but a calculated eruption of despair and anger. When police stormed into the library, they found chaos. Victims were scattered across the floor, bleeding and terrified. Jouet, his hands raised, surrendered without a fight. As they escorted him out, he passed by a woman lying on the ground and asked why no one was helping her. An officer replied sharply, "Think about it." That moment underscored the disconnect between the violence he had unleashed and the reality of its consequences. Investigators later learned that Jouet had retrieved the firearms and ammunition directly from his father's safe at home. The safe was reportedly unlocked, making it easy for him to arm himself. He told police he knew how to shoot because he had practiced before. This revelation became central to the lawsuits filed years later by survivors. Alexis and Noah Molina, who were among the injured, argued that Dwight's family failed to secure their weapons and ignored glaring red flags about his deteriorating mental health. Alexis, who was shot 4 times while shielding her 10-year-old brother Noah, has since endured long recovery and lasting trauma. Their attorney, Michael Sowicki, described it bluntly. "It's devastating to think about a 10-year-old boy being shot while his sister shields him with her body and is shot right on top of him. That has to leave a lasting psychological impression." The Molinas' lawsuit not only names Juaid's father and grandfather, but also a psychologist, Eric Bonegay, who allegedly knew Juaid was suicidal, violent toward others, and in possession of weapons but failed to act on that information. The question of accountability loomed large. Should a family be responsible for a teenager's crimes when signs of danger were evident? According to the lawsuit, Juaid's father, Christopher, was aware of his son's struggles with anger, violent outbursts, and threats of self-harm, yet still allowed access to the family's gun collection. His grandfather allegedly supplied him with one of the weapons later used in the massacre. These decisions, the Molinas argue, contributed directly to the tragedy. In court, Juaid eventually pleaded guilty to 30 charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder. In February 2019, he was sentenced to 2 life terms, with the possibility of parole, plus 40 additional years for other felonies. For the survivors, though, the sentencing was only one piece of justice. The civil lawsuits seek damages to cover medical costs and the deep psychological scars left behind. Neighbors of the Juaid family expressed disbelief when the details came out. One recalled, "You would actually think, what kind of influence did he have at home?" That question cuts to the heart of the community's grief. Clovis is a small town where families knew each other, where the library was seen as a safe haven for children and adults alike. The shooting shattered that sense of security. Juaid's father released a public statement after the arrest, saying the family was deeply saddened and never expected something like this. He described Nathaniel as a loving son and asked for privacy, but to many the words rang hollow compared to the devastation caused. The Clovis Library shooting remains one of the most painful episodes in the region's recent history. It forced conversations about youth mental health, gun safety, and the responsibility of families and professionals to act when clear danger signs emerge. It also highlighted the resilience of survivors, like Alexis and Noah, who not only lived through unimaginable terror, but now fight for accountability. In remembering this case, it is important to recall not just the horror of the crime, but the humanity of its victims. Christina Carter and Wanda Walters dedicated their lives to serving the community through books and learning. Alexis and Noah Molina's bond as siblings was proven in the most harrowing of circumstances. The lawsuits may never undo the past, but they seek to ensure that the failures which allowed this tragedy to unfold are never repeated. At its core, the Clovis Library shooting is a story of warning signs ignored, of weapons too easily accessible, and of lives forever changed by one teenager's decision to pull the trigger. For the community, it is also a call to remember that safety is not passive. It must be actively protected by families, by schools, by mental health professionals, and by everyone who has the chance to intervene before despair turns deadly. On the morning of April 20, 2018, Forest High School in Ocala, Florida, was supposed to be like any other Friday. More than 2,300 students arrived on buses, chatting with friends, grabbing books and preparing for classes. But for one former student, 19-year-old Sky Bush, the day would unfold in a way that shocked the entire community and left investigators piecing together his motives for years to come. Bushu, who had dropped out of the school 2 years earlier, pulled into the student parking lot in a silver Nissan Xterra. His vehicle bore the odd signature of pink duct tape on the bumper, something that would later help deputies track it down. In his car, Bush carried with him a guitar case and a bag. But instead of music, the case hid a 1930s shotgun he had bought in a private sale, while the bag was stuffed with ammunition, a knife, and a tactical vest. Surveillance footage shows him walking casually toward the school, blending in like a student with music gear. He made his way upstairs, slipping into the boys' changing room, where he had privacy to prepare. There, he put on the vest, filled it with shotgun shells, slipped a knife into a pocket, and pulled the old shotgun from the guitar case. According to his later testimony, he felt an adrenaline rush coursing through him. Not anger or hatred, he said, just the thrill of doing something reckless. What happened next was both sudden and confusing. Bruce walked to room 229, where an English teacher was handing out worksheets. Standing in the hallway, he pointed the shotgun at the classroom door and fired one. The blast tore through the door, striking 17-year-old student Evan in the ankle. Evan began to bleed heavily, collapsing onto a bench with his head down. As chaos erupted inside the classroom, the teacher tried frantically to dial 911, but could not get a signal. He instead contacted the school office. Within moments, administrators, coaches, and Marion County Sheriff's Deputy Jim Long rushed to the scene. Long's body camera recorded what followed. The smell of gunpowder filled the hallway. The principal and basketball coach worked to give Evan first aid. Realizing the situation, they called out Code Red, the school's highest emergency alert. Doors slammed shut, locking students into classrooms, as rumors of an active shooter spread. But the threat was already shifting. Hearing the cries of Evan in pain, rushing to panic, he dropped his shotgun in the hallway, leaving it behind as he wandered aimlessly. A teacher he once knew, Ms. McManus, encountered him. Strangely, instead of fleeing, Bushi surrendered himself to her. She allowed him into her classroom, where he lay face down on the ground until Deputy Long arrived to handcuff him. Even as officers secured him, confusion hung in the air. Why had he entered armed like a soldier, fired a single shot, and then given up so quickly? Deputy Long, still processing what he saw, asked pointedly, "Who is he and what is he doing here?" During questioning, Bush explained how he had carried the shotgun in the guitar case through the school without anyone stopping him. The fact that he had made it inside with such ease disturbed both police and parents who had gathered outside the school in panic. Bush was calm as he gave officers details about his car, his past at the school, and the weapon. His composure unsettled investigators. Later, during interviews, Bush admitted he never truly wanted to kill anyone. He claimed the shooting was unintentional, that he simply fired through the door without knowing someone was standing behind it. He said he felt terrible when he heard Evan scream in pain. That was when he decided to abandon the weapon and surrender. "If I had wanted to do something really bad, I could have kept going," he told reporters. "There were no officers there to stop me." He also spoke about his upbringing, revealing a childhood shaped not by physical abuse, but by neglect. Surrounded by relatives with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, he described his home as chaotic, filled with shouting and instability. He said he longed to escape, and once dreamed of joining the Marine Corps, but was Baker acted at 14, after a mental health crisis, ending that ambition. He explained how isolation fed his rage. With few friends and an injury that ended his martial arts training, he spent most of his time alone, stewing in dark thoughts. Bush admitted the shotgun he carried had been purchased in a private sale with no paperwork, an unsettling reminder of how easily firearms can change hands. He even confessed he was not sure the old weapon would still function when it fired, and when he realized someone had been hit, the reality struck him harder than he anticipated. The incident left many unanswered questions. Was it a cry for help? Was it the product of untreated mental illness? Or was it an impulsive act by a young man who had spent too long isolated and angry? Whatever the reasons, the outcome was clear. A student was injured, a school was traumatized, and countless families were left shaken by how close the event came to becoming a full-scale tragedy. In April 2021, 3 years after the shooting, Bush faced sentencing because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The hearing was held virtually. He was given 30 years in prison, with a minimum of 25 before he would be eligible for release. For the community, the punishment felt both heavy and yet not entirely satisfying. Some believed it was lenient, given the potential for greater loss of life. Others argued it was fair, since he had surrendered and caused less harm than he could have. The Forest High School shooting is remembered as one of those cases that raised more questions than it answered. Why did a young man with no clear hatred for others carry a gun into a school? Why did he fire at all if he intended to stop? And most importantly, how many other young people like him are slipping through the cracks of neglect, isolation, and easy access to weapons. What cannot be debated is the impact. Students and staff will forever remember the smell of gunpowder in the hallway, the sudden shout of code red, and the terrifying uncertainty of not knowing if they were safe. For the injured, like Evan, the scars remain physical as well as psychological. For Bush, the next 3 decades will be spent in prison, reflecting on a decision that changed dozens of lives in a matter of seconds. It begins like any ordinary afternoon at a suburban supermarket. Fluorescent lights, sliding doors, carts rattling across concrete. But at 2:59 p.m., a woman in black steps through those doors at the Giant Eagle in North Olmsted, Ohio. Her name is Bianca Ellis. In her right hand, tucked behind her leg but not concealed, is a kitchen knife. She does not glance around or hesitate. Cameras catch her pace, steady and intent, as she trails a young mother pushing a cart. In the front seat sits 3-year-old Julian Wood, small, buckled in, staring up at a world that should have been safe. Other shoppers flow past. No one seems to notice the blade, or the way Bianca keeps her distance yet never breaks the line of sight. It looks like any other grocery run, which is part of what makes what happens next so chilling. The mother finishes at checkout and heads into the lot. She lifts a hatch, shifts bags, moves with the unthinking rhythm of routine. Julian is still in the child seat. Bianca closes the distance. There is no warning, no argument, no demand. The first thrust lands in the child's face, the next in his back. His mother tries to pull him close, and the knife flashes again, slicing into her shoulder. The sound that follows is awful. A thin cry from a little boy, a scream from a mother bleeding and refusing to let go. Then, movement, a shockwave in the parking lanes. Shoppers freeze. Someone runs. Phones come out. 911 lights up with layered panic. A caller repeating, "There is a child bleeding all over the place. We are at Giant Eagle. Please hurry."
911, what is your emergency?
There is a child. He's bleeding all over the place. We're at North Homicide, Giant Eagle.
Officers arrive fast. Body cameras capture the blur. Shoes on concrete. A rush to the cart where Julian now lies crumpled. Blood stains the gray slab under him. His mother is still upright, soaked through the sleeve, her voice breaking on the same words over and over. "Help my son." An officer grips the cart and counts. 1, 2, 3. They lift the boy to a stretcher. Paramedics push, siren already in the mind. Even before the ambulance door closes, the mother waves off attention. "Do not worry about me."
And they collapsed over here, and the lady just continued to walk on.
It is one of those images that stays. A parent insisting that every second and every hand go to the child, while first responders fight for Julian's life. The attacker is still walking. Witnesses point. An orange-shirted man gestures down Brook Road. Patrol cars pivot, dashcams show her ahead on the sidewalk. Still in black, still holding the knife. Not running, not hiding, just moving as if she has errands to finish. Officers exit with weapons drawn and commands clipped. Lay on the ground. She complies. The knife clatters to the pavement. Cuffs click. She says nothing. The scene quiets, a sudden pocket of order inside a day already broken. At the hospital, doctors do everything they can. The wounds are catastrophic. Julian does not survive. His mother lives, but what happened to her is larger than a scar. In the days after, neighbors and strangers leave toys, candles, flowers. The small city mourns a child whose name it had not known. A week earlier, reporters replay the calls that began with stunned voices and ended with hollow silence. People ask why. People always ask why. Pieces begin to surface. A few months earlier, in March, Bianca had been arrested at a Florida hotel after refusing to leave when she could not pay. She told officers she had nowhere to go and asked to be taken to jail. "Can I just go to prison?" she said, a sentence that lands like a plea.
Can I go to go to prison, cause I don't have nowhere to go.
Well, you haven't done anything to go to jail.
But I don't have any money to have a bed to go to sleep in. I'm not even from here. I'm from Ohio.
In Cleveland, at a women's shelter, she told police she had killed people in California, a claim officers did not substantiate and did not treat as credible. The pattern describes a woman adrift, contacting authorities, saying alarming things, slipping away without treatment or sustained oversight. How many points along that path were chances to intervene? How many people heard her, noted her distress, and then moved on? In the hours before the stabbing, Bianca reportedly walked into a police station to ask about cash she believed had been taken during a prior arrest. She left with no money and no redirection. Later that day, she walked into a grocery store with a knife. The gap between those two moments is less a mystery than a void. When systems are not built to hold someone in crisis, the fall can be immediate, and it can carry others with it. Prosecutors move quickly after the arrest. 10 serious charges are filed, including aggravated murder, attempted murder, felonious assault, child endangerment, tampering with evidence, and theft. In early hearings, Bianca's behavior is strange. She makes faces, fidgets, seems detached from what is being said. A judge finds her unfit to stand trial and orders treatment. Months later, after medication and evaluation, both sides tell the court she is competent. The case is put back on the calendar. A trial date set. Prosecutors say the death penalty remains under review. The facts will be argued. The videos will be played. Experts will explain what fitness and sanity mean inside a courtroom. None of it will change the reality that a child is gone. There are questions here that do not fit neatly into any indictment. How should police and shelters respond when someone presents with signs of severe instability, but no immediate chargeable offense? What safety net exists between a trespass arrest and a fatal act weeks later? How do we protect public spaces when the threat is not a plot, but a person whose mind is breaking? Those are not easy questions. They are necessary ones. Because this was not a domestic dispute, not a robbery, not a feud. This was a mother and son loading groceries in broad daylight. This was a knife and a choice. This was a community that will now carry the name of a boy it could not save. If there is any place to end, it is with the people on the ground in those first minutes. The shoppers who called, the officer who counted and lifted, the paramedics who ran, the mother who said, "Do not worry about me. Grace does not undo harm." But in moments like this, it is the only light left to hold. This is the story of 17-year-old Darisha Bailey from Rochester, Minnesota. What happened to her on July 16, 2023, would change lives forever and leave an entire community shaken. It began in the early hours of the morning, around 4:20 a.m., at Lakeside Veterans Memorial Park in Forest Lake. What should have been just another summer night turned violent when tension between two rival groups of young people, tensions that had been simmering for 2 years, finally boiled over into open confrontation. Witnesses said both groups arrived armed. Some carried baseball bats, hammers, and even a crowbar. Prosecutors revealed that 20-year-old Dylan Simmons had been playing hacky sack with friends at the park when he sent a text message to Devin Bailey, Darisha's brother, telling him to come to the park for a fight. The conflict between Simmons and the Bailey family had been growing for years, and that night, it exploded. Simmons arrived with a passenger in a white Mazda sedan. Both men stepped out, holding hammers. Devin Bailey and his friend carried a baseball bat and a folding knife. From the start, it was chaos. A witness later told jurors that both sides were in the wrong. For a short while, it was nothing more than shoving, shouting, and the waving of weapons. Then the fight began to fizzle, with Simmons and his passenger turning back toward their car. That was when the night took a deadly turn. As Simmons started the engine, he first drove toward the crowd, narrowly missing several people standing just inches away. The car brushed one person's leg and nearly ran over another's foot before slamming into the back of Devin Bailey's parked vehicle. He reversed, paused, and then accelerated again. This time, the car struck 17-year-old Darisha. The impact threw her down, and both the front and rear tires rolled over her body before Simmons sped off into the night. For the first time, footage of the incident has been made public. From 3 different perspectives, the video shows the white Mazda charging forward, panicked voices screaming, "Oh my God," in the background. Within minutes, police and paramedics arrived on the scene. Body cameras captured officers rushing to Darisha's side. As she lay motionless on the pavement, witnesses described the chaos: friends crying, family screaming, and officers frantically beginning CPR. Despite their best efforts, Darisha had suffered multiple fractures and a traumatic head injury. She was pronounced dead at the scene. A medical examiner later ruled her death a homicide. Simmons did not get far. His passenger called someone still at the park, who convinced him to return. Simmons drove back and admitted to officers that he knew he had hit someone. That admission, combined with the surveillance footage, gave prosecutors enough evidence to upgrade his charges to second-degree murder, along with 3 counts of second-degree assault. When Simmons appeared in court, the community's grief boiled over into rage. 2 families, one seeking justice, the other clinging to claims of innocence, clashed inside and outside the courtroom. On the very first day of the trial, tempers flared so violently that a hole was punched in a courthouse wall. Even lunch breaks turned hostile, with relatives shouting at each other in a nearby pizza restaurant. Darisha's family demanded accountability. Her loved ones insisted Simmons intentionally drove into the crowd and struck her. He admitted that he hit her, but he won't admit he did it on purpose. One family member said, adding, "We lost a life, so he should spend the rest of his life in prison." Simmons's mother painted a different picture. Speaking publicly for the first time, she said her son was not a murderer, but a terrified young man who panicked when he felt surrounded. His car was being beaten with bats. He was scared. He put it in drive, she explained. Unfortunately, she didn't get out of the way. It's tragic, but he didn't mean to kill anyone. She argued that while he should face consequences, a 32-year sentence or life behind bars was unjust. The trial lasted 5 days. Jurors heard testimony, reviewed surveillance footage, and listened to the desperate 911 calls from that night. In the end, they reached a verdict. Simmons was found guilty of second-degree murder without intent, meaning the jury believed he killed Darisha but not with premeditation. He was acquitted of second-degree murder with intent. Still, he was convicted of criminal vehicular homicide and 3 counts of second-degree assault with a dangerous weapon. Simmons now faces up to 40 years in prison. His sentencing is scheduled for March 20th, 2025. While the Bailey family finally received a measure of justice, their pain has not faded. Standing outside the courthouse, Darisha's mother said, "My daughter is gone. I will never see her graduate, never see her become the veterinarian she dreamed of being. I will never hug her again." Darisha's friends and siblings echoed those words, remembering her as bright, determined, and full of life. She had been planning her future, excited about her senior year of high school, and determined to pursue a career helping animals. Those dreams ended on a dark summer night, in a park where a long-running feud turned into a tragedy. The courtroom verdict may have closed one chapter, but for Darisha's family, the loss will last forever. They carry the weight of her absence every day, missing not only their daughter and sister, but also the best friend who should have walked across a graduation stage in the spring. A 17-year-old girl with big dreams died because of a fight that should never have happened, and a 20-year-old man will now spend much of his life in prison. For Forest Lake, the scars of that night remain, a reminder of how quickly anger can turn to violence, and how fragile life truly is. On the evening of November 18, 2021, a tragedy unfolded outside a chicken shop on London Road in Croydon. 14-year-old Jermaine Cools became the youngest victim of knife crime in London that year, when he was fatally stabbed during a brawl between groups of youths. The boy who killed him, Marquez Walker, was just 16 at the time, but he carried with him a weapon that police and prosecutors described as a zombie knife, a brutal blade designed to intimidate and maim. It was around 6:50 p.m. when police received reports of a large fight near the takeaway shop. CCTV cameras captured what happened next. Among the chaos, Walker appeared calm, almost detached, as he pulled the weapon from his clothing. Moments later, Jermaine stumbled to the ground. That was when Walker lunged at him repeatedly, stabbing him as Jermaine rolled across the pavement, desperately trying to avoid the blows. In total, he suffered 7 wounds, one of which pierced his chest and fatally damaged his lung. Bystanders were horrified. One member of the public rushed to help the bleeding teenager, lifting him into a car and driving him straight to Croydon Hospital. Doctors fought to save his life, but the injuries were too severe. Jermaine was pronounced dead before 8 p.m., less than an hour after the first call to police. For detectives, the case moved quickly. CCTV showed Walker leaving the scene, the blade still in hand, within hours. His name was circulating, but Walker did not wait to be caught. He left home the next day and tried to vanish. Police mounted a 6-week hunt. Finally, on December 17th, officers conducting an unrelated arrest at a house found him hiding under a bed. He gave a false name but was eventually identified and arrested for murder. What emerged during the investigation painted a grim picture of a teenager already steeped in violence. Walker was a habitual knife carrier. Earlier that year, in April, he had been caught with a long blade just 6 months before the killing. In October, he was arrested on a bus in Croydon, carrying another zombie-style knife. He was charged but released on bail. 6 weeks later, Jermaine was dead. The evidence against him only grew. In April 2022, while Walker was on remand, staff at Feltham Young Offender Institution searched his belongings and discovered handwritten rap lyrics that appeared to boast about the killing. The words referenced Stardog, a street name linked to Jermaine's relative, and gloated about leaving Mandan bleeding. For prosecutors, the lyrics revealed a chilling lack of remorse and a desire to glorify what had happened. His violence did not stop there. While awaiting trial, Walker joined 3 others in a vicious prison assault. They kicked and stamped on another detainee, leaving him with severe brain injuries that required emergency surgery. The incident confirmed what many already feared, that he was both dangerous and unrepentant. When the case reached the Old Bailey, the evidence was overwhelming. The CCTV footage, the forensic findings, the history of carrying weapons, and even his own writings left little doubt. In 2023, Walker was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 19 years. Before parole eligibility, he was just 17. The senior investigating officer, Detective Chief Inspector Richard Vandenberg, spoke plainly outside court. Jermaine was only 14 years old, still a child, and he was stabbed to death in the street. His life was brutally cut short, and his family will never recover from this loss. He described Walker as someone who had been able to get hold of dangerous knives again and again, and warned that anyone who saw those blades would understand the devastation they could cause. Jermaine's family were left devastated. They described him as a boy with his whole life ahead of him, snatched away in seconds by senseless violence. In their grief, they found the strength to speak out about knife crime, hoping their words might prevent another family from enduring the same pain. Their message was clear: this culture of carrying knives has to end, or more children will die. The case also reignited debate about the availability of so-called zombie knives. These weapons, often sold online and designed with jagged edges and menacing shapes, have been banned in the UK since 2016, yet they continue to find their way into the hands of teenagers. Campaigners argue that stronger enforcement and harsher penalties for possession are needed, alongside prevention efforts in schools and communities. Walker's sentencing highlighted the grim reality of youth violence in London. A child barely into adulthood had taken another child's life, and in doing so, had destroyed his own future as well. Judge and jury alike acknowledged the senselessness of it all. One teenager dead, another facing decades behind bars, and families on both sides broken. Knife crime has long been one of the UK's most pressing public safety concerns, and the death of Jermaine Cools is a heartbreaking example of its toll. His name now joins a list of young victims whose stories continue to haunt London streets. His mother has said that every day is a reminder of what she has lost. A son who should have grown into a man, who should have had dreams, ambitions, and a family of his own. As Jermaine's family works through their grief, they have called for stronger action from authorities and communities alike. The responsibility, they say, lies not just with police and lawmakers, but with parents, teachers, and peers. Preventing another tragedy means changing attitudes, breaking cycles of violence, and refusing to normalize carrying knives as part of teenage life. Jermaine Cools was 14 years old. He was not a gang leader or a hardened criminal. He was a boy outside a chicken shop who became the target of a knife carried by someone who should never have had it. His story is now a reminder of what is at stake, of what can be lost, and of how urgent the fight against knife crime remains. Rest in peace to Jermaine Coles. His family's courage in speaking out ensures that his name will not just be another statistic, but a call to action. With this last footage comes the end of this episode as well. If you learned something here, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We upload almost daily videos like these, so you don't want to miss out on what's happening in the world. And if you don't want to wait until the next video, there will be more on your screen in about 3 seconds. I'll see you there.